everybody. Welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's Francis here, and I am here with a guy, Matthew. Matthew reached out to me a while ago and let me know that he was a submariner. Something that I have always been fascinated by because it sounds like literally the most insane thing a person could do. But we have people who do it constantly. So, Matthew, how you doing today?
Doing fine, Francis. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. It's right before I know you've already started your 4 day, and I just got off of work from my regular job. So, looking forward to a weekend of stoic debauchery as we drink and eat barbecue and remember our fallen brethren. But I appreciate you coming on to talk to me about this. So, first off, the submarine. You were on the submarine. Which one were you on?
USS Newport News.
The Newport
SSN
News.
Sub 50.
Okay, and how did that's where does that name come from?
It comes from the Newport News shipyard down in Norfolk.
They just kind of named it after the shipyard that it was built in, kind of like a junior kind of situation here.
Yes, so she was the third ship to be named after the Newport News shipyard.
So does that get confusing when you're out and about? You run into the other Newport News. We're tootling along, or is it, or do they get like, no, we can have one submarine, one destroyer, one aircraft carrier that can be called these things just to keep everything separate?
So people do get mixed up with the shipyard and my boat, but they usually only name one boat, whatever. But funny story, I actually accidentally gave an O5 the middle finger, and when he asked me to explain where I was from, I said Newport News, and he thought I meant the shipyard. So, oops, my bad.
I gotta say, that's interesting. You just referred to it as a boat, and usually I get yelled at by Navy people. Now, I know you're Army now, so maybe it's specifically to piss off Navy people like I do, but why are you referring to it as a boat and not a ship?
So, traditionally, the old school diesel boats from World War II, they were called boats because of the size. And so that's just kind of the tradition that stuck with it. But now because of the size they're considered ships.
Okay. So, and these are, I assume, nuclear submarines, right? The nuclear powered submarines.
Yes.
Okay. So what kind of difference, like the entirety of my submarine knowledge comes from the movie Down Periscope. And I remember, I'm sure you've watched it many times. Who wouldn't want to watch Kelsey Grammer in a diesel boat under the water? But what kind of difference are we looking at here? Like, what a diesel boat? Like, I'm sure World War II, the submarines we had then versus kind of what we have now.
So the submarines that we have now, they're pretty much 200 feet longer. Generally, they're a lot bigger. Nuclear boats they tend to be a little bit louder because you have constantly running equipment, but those diesel boats they're pretty quiet when they're doing silent operations.
Mm-hmm. Well, how does that, like, I would think diesel, I've been around diesel engines. So why is nuclear powered louder?
Because you have because of the equipment that's always running, so you're always keeping turbines and motor generators and all that nonsense running, as opposed to a diesel boat when you're running the diesel to charge the batteries, and then you're just in the water.
Okay, so you can in essence just charge up the batteries and then run silent, but still be moving. But you can't do that in a nuclear sub.
Right.
Would make sense to put batteries on the nukes, but I'm not a submariner. I don't know the intricacies behind that. So, but how do you, like? Is this like an elite, like, kind of place to be? Is this like the special forces of the Navy? Well, I mean, the SEALs and whatnot are the special forces of the Navy, but like, it seems like being a submariner, I've always heard that it's a difficult position to get.
So you have to volunteer for it again. So you go to MEPS, you volunteer to be in the armed forces, and then you have to basically volunteer again to go to a submarine. And generally the ASVAB requirements are a little bit higher, but other than that, no, there's no real screening for it.
Mm-hmm. And what was your job on the submarine?
I was an auxiliary mechanic, so I worked on all the non-nuclear mechanical systems.
Okay, and you're enlisted, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what's the ratio officer to enlisted there?
About 10 to 1.
Okay. And so and I've also always heard, and again, this is a lot of hearsay from what I've heard from older times on the submarines, but the idea that everybody has to kind of know what everybody else does in the event, because you can't just like call up and be like, oh, we need to get a guy to we need a new submariner, we need a new auxiliary mechanic. So is that kind of a like, well, we can pull somebody out of the galley and they can do mechanic work, or is this very specified kind of knowledge that you have?
So when you're in your qualification process for your submarine warfare pin, you have to have a general idea of everybody's job and everybody's piece of equipment. But for the most part, you just do your specific tasking.
Okay. So what I guess what is the process for getting the submarine pit? Like say it's me, I'm 20, I've decided I want to encase myself in a steel coffin under the water. What is the process after, like what kind of, do you go through regular Navy boot basic training, then you have to go through another one? Is there, obviously there's all kinds of different jobs, so you have to go to the mechanics, you specifically go to the mechanic one, the nuke techs would go to the nuke one. The drivers would go to whatever the 88 mic course is for steering a submarine. What does that process look like?
So I originally was supposed to be a nuclear mechanic, so I have an idea of both the nuclear and the auxiliary or the regular non-nuke side. So you go to Navy boot camp, and if you're a nuke, you go to nuclear power school. So your A school, the nuke school, and then basically a live reactor where you train on it. And if you're a non-nuke, you go from Navy boot camp to Connecticut at the submarine school for basic submarine training. And that includes firefighting. So they have a firefighting simulator. They have a flooding, or not a, well, they do have a flooding simulator, but they also have a submarine escape simulator where you actually have to don the suit and escape out of it in a simulator. And then,
Really? That is,
yes. And
how
then
does that, so wait. How do you escape out of a submarine? Like you have to put on like a dive suit and jump and get out?
there's a specialized suit that fills up with air, and there's a lockout chamber. And so it's you and one other guy in this lockout chamber. You plug in, you fill in the suit, you flood the lockout chamber, and then you give 3 taps with a hammer, and they open up the top hatch, and you just rocket out of it.
Huh. And I assume that, like, is this at any depth you can do this?
There's a
This
limitation to the depth of it, but
okay.
it's if you have to go that far, it's like,
Right. Like, I kind of think about it as the same. Like, well, with an airplane, you can jump out and be safe. Like, well, under very specific circumstances, you can jump out of an airplane and be safe. Like, if you have the proper equipment, if the plane is not currently on fire. The submarine seems to be a little bit more of a I want to say death trap, but I'm going to. Because the idea, first off, I'm scared of drowning, and then second off, just the idea of being underwater is frightening for me. So I'm glad we have some people who are willing to do that, because certainly I would not be the one.
well, there's a reason we call those escape trunks mommy daddy trunks. It makes your mom and dad feel better about you going to a submarine. So
So you go through your mechanic training, you go through this flood training. What else? What other kind of trainings do you have to go through?
they basically just give you a rundown of a submarine. It's class specific. It used to be Los Angeles class boats like I was on, but now they're transitioning more to the newer boats. And then when you finish your A school and any additional C schools that you may have to go to, so if you're a sonar tech or a missile tech, any of that, you go to those schools. And then you show up to your boat. And then you show up to your boat, and your first day, they hand you a binder that's about an inch thick of qualifications, and they tell you to get hot.
Hmm. And so what does that mean? You got to learn all the qualifications.
Yes, so you go and you have to learn all of the systems. You have to know all the requirements and what your job is and everyone else's job. And so you basically go to someone. They call them checkouts. You go up to someone. You go, "I want to do a checkout," and then they go, "Okay." So then you just puke all of this knowledge learning from tech manuals and other people. And that might include technical drawings or in any specifications, or they might have you run around. So
So, but how long of a time do you have to get through that? Do you just have that day, or is it we ship off in 2 weeks? You better be ready to go by then.
so the card, the submarine qualification card, you're given a year to do it.
Okay.
But if you're doing a checkout, I was given checkouts to junior guys, and one guy just kept messing up, so he spent 2 weeks on one checkout.
So this is still the training process, though, right? Or is this the you've been assigned to a ship, and it's not necessarily on deployment, so we're just kind of hanging out, and this is the time we have to do all of this.
Oh no, this is bippity boppity boop. You're attached to a submarine, and we might be going on deployment.
Okay.
So here you go.
So you might end up getting sent out to do patrols even before you're technically fully qualified.
Yes.
Okay. Does that so? But then, what is the qualifications for? Like, what is that? You have a year and you're out now. You're not going to be a submariner anymore.
No. So you do the submarine qualification. You have to qualify on any of your jobs and any of the workstations. So, for example, I was working on my submarine warfare device. At the same time, I was training to drive the boat. I was also training to be a lookout. I was training to do security operations when we were in port. It's a lot.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know of, again, I come from the movies, and the movies only show like the cool shit that you would do in the military, like submarining, putting the periscope up, shooting the torpedoes, tootling around and whatnot under the water. But what is like, as we know in the army, cool guy army stuff, shooting, doing, kicking in doors and stuff, and really what you're doing is picking up cigarette butts in the motor pool. So, what is your average kind of like week look like? You're not on deployments. Are you in dry dock? Do you just kind of hang out on the ship? Like, what do you do? Like, you're assigned to it. What are you doing?
So if you're moored, so just attached to the pier, not doing anything, so you show up in the morning and you do work, and then every 3 to 4 days is your in the Army staff duty day, but a duty day where you're standing watches and making sure nothing bad happens to the boat.
Nobody comes and steals the boat. I'm
Yeah.
good. I would absolutely do that.
Yeah. Good luck.
No, hey, look again. I've watched down Periscope. I'm pretty sure I could figure it out.
You're an expert.
Yeah, there's a lot of wheels, a lot of buttons. You just got to start hitting them, and eventually it'll lurch forward. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Not completely blow up underneath me. So okay, so you don't necessarily live on the ship. You kind of have, I would assume, barracks nearby, and then you just drive like, oh, it's 8 o'clock. We gotta we did our PT this morning. Now we got to drive to the boat and do our 9 to 5 job on the boat. What are you doing?
Oh, well, first off, there is no organized PT. That's
Okay.
that's just not a thing. So you show up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then what we would usually do is we would show up to my personal space, the machinery room. We would gather around the whiteboard, and we would be told to this is all of the tasks that have to get done today, and these are everyone that's doing it. So let's get to it. And then we would be on the ship until all those tasks or plus some are completed. So that can range from showing up at 8 o'clock to 11 in the morning, or 8 o'clock to 0300, which I've done before.
Hmm. That does sound very Navy. Some days you get a free afternoon, and some days you don't get anything for free. Uh, so what are some of these tasks that you're having to do? Like you got to polish the brass, you got to sweep the corridors. There's not a motor pool to police. So what are you doing?
You're doing maintenance on systems, so replacing filters, gaskets, any big items that also have to get done. So testing on pieces of equipment, doing training for workups. So basically, if you've been in port long enough, you're usually not operating all the equipment, so you have to do training to get certified to operate it. So
Pull everything out. Make sure when you hit the switch, it still turns on and beeps when it's supposed to beep. Yeah, I've had to do stuff like that.
yes.
So, and have you done deployments on the boats as well?
Yes, I did two deployments, one in 2018 and one in 2020.
And how long is a deployment for a ship like yours?
It's supposed to be 6 months, but I did seven and 7.5.
What kind of amenities do you have on a boat like this? Do you have, I mean, do you have a PX? Like, do you have a place that you can, like, a rec room? Is there a place where you can send emails and things like that? Like, I know that when you're not, you have your normal barracks off the ship, but during your deployments, what do you have to kind of like pass the time when you're not doing your 12 to 16 hours on?
So to answer that, Joe Kasabian from Lions Led by Donkeys just did an episode on the Thresher, and I just want to quash what he said about submarines having a gym. We did not have a gym. We had a Bowflex dumbbell, one of those adjustable ones,
Uh huh.
TRX bands, and a bench that was strapped to the wall. So there is no gym. So what you're usually on a fast attack boat, like when I was on, you have cruise mess where you eat. It's also where you play movies, and that's it. There is no there's no other space to do anything. Everything's for operations or working. Uh, there are two there. We had two laptops that you can send emails on, but depending on what you're doing, they may or may not go off the boat, and you may or may not receive any. So on my first deployment, I think I received maybe 5 emails in 7.5 months.
And they were all spam.
Yes.
Yeah, all of them telling you about hot milfs in your area. You're like, this is the Pacific Ocean. There's nothing out here.
I am the hottie.
Exactly. So, what? So, how many people are down there with you?
It can range from 90 to 180.
And how much time do you have to like get real buddy buddy with people? Because it seems like if I'm going to be trapped, like I've done deployments, and but a deployment on an army base is you're stuck on the base, but you can kind of go walk. You can like, man, I really want to not look at anybody in my fucking unit right now. And usually you can go walk in a direction and just like not see people for a while. So kind of how to like that. I'm sure that like the cohesion, the unit cohesion has to be great, but also I imagine like the animosity when it is there is also just as intense. Is
Uh,
that
uh,
true?
we never had any. We never had any real animosity on my boat. We had a pretty much a good crew, but I've heard of things boiling over on the other boats. So it happens. There's hardly any personal space. There really isn't a spot where you can just be by your lonesome unless
Are you having to share cots? Is that the hot cots thing, or do you get at least your own place to lay down?
no, it's hot cots.
Ugh.
And so, a story, the only time I've ever seen someone be alone on a boat was when he basically crawled through all of the sea piping to the outer wall of the ship, and he made his own little rat's nest of stuff.
That is 100% me. Just like a bunch of newspapers, stuff back there for padding, a book, and a bunch of empty Otis Spunkmeyer wrappers.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, and that's like that's another thing. You just don't really have any kind of privacy down there. I imagine like, can you even take a shit in private?
Uh, I mean, do you have a stall? You have a
Okay.
stalled bathroom, so there's that.
All right. That answers my other question of where do you jerk off? So
Your bunk, or with everyone else around you, or in a stall with
yeah,
3 other guys in the latrine with you.
you gotta either be real quiet or you gotta be real forgiving of one another.
Usually they just put on noise canceling headphones and just go to town.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So, your deployments. What's the mission of a submarine? Like, we're not really engaged in any kind of conflict with anyone that has anything that can really like maybe China. I don't think Russian submarines really are like I've seen the Russian aircraft carrier. from 20 miles away on fire as it usually is. So I can't imagine that superpower is really doing anything. So what's the mission? You're 7 months out. What are you guys doing?
Uh, I can't really say because we all signed an NDA saying we can't talk about operations.
Oh,
But
okay.
what if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it? There is a book called Blind Man's Bluff, and it talks about submarines that do ISR, or they track other boats, or they insert SEAL teams. But I can't say what I did.
Sure. But so there are like it's not just kind of tootling around and being like, "Yep, we're here. We're patrolling an area." There are actual like kind of I mean, a submarine in by itself is a clandestine uh ship in general. Like it's meant to be quiet, it's meant to be sneaky, so it has quiet and sneaky jobs that it does.
Yeah, so there are things that go on in the world, and there are things that go on in the world that are on the water that nobody really knows about. That's just how it is. And the if there's something like that, there's always going to be a submarine there. Always, they're always watching the ocean. There's always submarines in the ocean, whether they're from the U.S. or England or France or Russia or China or whatever. But there's always a boat out there, and it's always doing God knows what, God knows where.
So that is interesting. Also, French and British submarines. Do you guys have like I don't say run-ins, but just kind of passing by, like, hey, it's the Her Majesty's ship, the underwater boat there. Kind of. I mean, is there any like kind of cross communication there, or is it just like, nope, we have our thing, they have their thing, we know they're there, we know we're here, it's fine.
Usually we just do our own thing. Like we usually when we're on a mission, uh, even the Navy doesn't know where we're at. We just have to keep the honesty system and be like, we're here. But on my first deployment, we did pull into Scotland at a British Navy base out there, and so I got to interact with a bunch of British sailors, and I got to tour one of their submarines.
Is our submarines are nicer though, right?
What?
I said our submarines are nicer though,
I
right?
don't know. They had carpet. That was pretty
Oh
nice.
shit. Look, I look as somebody who like I when I move into a house, I immediately tear up the carpet. Carpet is gross and it's hard to clean. You can't just throw bleach water onto carpet and get it clean. So I mean, it depends on where the carpeting is, I suppose. Do they have a gym? Do they have a nice place to lift weights at?
No, they don't. Submariners around the world are all brothers because it sucks, and we all know it sucks. But at least we enjoy the suck together.
Yeah. So what do you get out of this? Like, why you did it for like 4 years? Like, why is it like 1 year? It's just like, nope. Can you put me somewhere where I can breathe fresh air? Like, what is it? What is it that compelled you to continue to be a submariner?
To get out, you mean?
No, to just stay. Like
Oh,
you did two deployments. Like, how did you do one? Just do one and be like, fuck this, and not go running somewhere else.
well, because I'm stupid and I don't know when to quit.
That's that is the swan song of everybody in the
and,
military who's ever
and
reenlisted, I
and
suppose.
also you get paid a lot more as a submariner, so you get
There
submarine
you
pay
go.
and sea pay, and I was getting BAH as an E4, so yeah. But now I'm in the Army barracks, so
Ugh. Yeah, what's with that? I guess upgrade. Like, what's and what do you do now? For Are you still a mechanic?
no, I'm a geospatial engineer, so I make maps.
That is quite a leap, but also, if ever you're looking for a job, St. Louis is where you got to come.
I
We
I
got
I heard that's all the NGA and all of the geospatial stuff is out there.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not too sure why, but we love to make maps here in St. Louis.
I have no idea, but I got a job offer the other day to help build the new Columbia class ballistic missile sub. So I'm not going to be hurting for money.
Well, I get you work on submarines long enough, and there's not really a whole lot of other people who do that. So it's like, well, shit, you already know what you're doing. Come build more submarines with us. So you've mentioned a couple of different classes. What are the classes of submarines that we have currently?
So we have the Los Angeles class submarines, and there's
And is,
the,
and is that the oldest
yes,
that's currently running? Okay.
yes, and there's a couple variations of those, And then we have Virginia class boats, which are the newer ones. We have the new Columbia class boats, which are getting currently built. We have the Ohio class ballistic missile submarines, and then we have the Seawolf class submarines.
So what are the what is a you mentioned ballistic, so the shooty the submarines that do the shooting. It seemed like you indicated that the boat that you were on was more of a silent running clandestine kind of thing, and then you got the Seawolf. So what are they're built for different things. They're not all just like we have a sub; it does everything. What are these? What are the kind of the not the what are the design specs of the Seawolf? But like what are they? What's the difference between these?
So the Los Angeles class submarine was originally built as an attack submarine to hunt other Russian submarines and to attack the Russian surface navy. And then as things came along, the different requirements were built. So my boat can shoot tomahawks. So they put vertical launch tubes in her. So the Los Angeles class slowly morphed into a multi-spectrum boat of multi-spectrum operations, and
Right,
then the
kind of retrofit it for what we need rather than just
right,
necessarily scrapping it and building something brand
right,
new.
and the Ohio class boats are the ballistic missile submarines, so they have all the nukes. So if they want to end the world, they can end the world. The Seawolf class boats, which there's only 3 of them, they built those to replace the Los Angeles class boats, but then the Soviet Union collapsed, and then the U.S. The for probably the only time the U.S. Navy ever looked at itself and said, "Why are we spending billions of dollars on this?" So that got cannexed pretty quickly, and then they replaced that with the Virginia class boats.
So the Seawolves are also pretty old then. Like what year? Like we talking 1980s kind of
So
ships?
the original boat Seawolf was laid down in '86 and then commissioned in '96. And then Connecticut was commissioned in like '98, I think. And then Jimmy Carter was commissioned in '03.
What is that? What's the difference between laid down and commissioned?
So you lay down basically when the first piece of steel is laid down at the shipyard
Ah, okay,
to the boat's in the water and it is certified to be a ship in the U.S. Navy, pretty much.
gotcha. So it takes like 10 years to build a submarine, huh?
It depends. So my boat took 3 years to build and then 3 years to commission. Some boats take 2 years to build and then 3 years to commission. The Seawolf just you know how military procurement programs go, where there's an idea and then more ideas get thrown at it, and then funding, and then I don't know, shipyard workers go on strike, and so they have to delay.
If you ever want to watch a movie about that, it's called The Pentagon Wars about the Bradley. But yes, I'm aware, I'm familiar with that insanity.
Oh, absolutely.
So we've got we've got what the Los Angeles is kind of the all around, and that's still working. We've got the ballistic ones, and then the Seawolf ones, which really don't need. And then what is this Columbia class? What is the role of that one going to be?
They're going to be a hybrid between a ballistic missile submarine and a cruise missile submarine. So, depending on what they need them for, they can either carry the ballistic missiles, intercontinental missiles, or they can put the Tomahawk adapter pretty much inside the tube so they can launch Tomahawks.
So I guess Tomahawks are more of a we need to fuck those people up 500 miles from here versus 5,000 miles from here.
Well, Tomahawks are non-nuclear, so we
Right.
can, we can do conventional negotiations with
Mm.
with other countries with those.
Yes, that's a very good public affairs term there. Can you hybrid it? Can you like, well, we're going to have half of our tubes be conventional, half of them be nuclear, or do you have to pick one or the other?
I think you have to do one or the other, but I I don't know anyone that's worked on one or is in development of it. I blue.
Right. So, what I guess when you're out on your missions and you come back, what is the like kind of we're done with our deployments. We have to kind of scrub things down. Like, what do you I guess the turnaround time, because I think about things in army terms, right? So you come back from a deployment, you have to get all of your equipment, clean it up, make sure that everything's still working, replace the shit that's not working with things that do work, upgrade things and stuff like that. You come back from a deployment like this. What is kind of the like? All right, we've got a year of downtime before we're going to get deployed again. What is the what? Like, are you offloading some people, getting new ones on? What's going on?
So when you pull in from a deployment, what is supposed to happen is you start a stand down immediately. But in the Navy, we split stand downs in half, so we don't have to. I don't. The Army does this thing where they just send everyone at once, but in the Navy, you have to have people on the boat at least to watch it.
Yeah, you guys have like nobody's gonna steal army shit. It's all broken anyway. Like, but you guys have like there's nuclear bombs on this, or if not, there's a nuclear engine on it. We cannot
Right,
just let everybody fuck off and lock the door and be
right.
like, all right, I've got a key, you've got a
So
key, we're
so
good.
you send one crew off for half the crew off for 2 weeks, and then while the other is staying behind, and then you swap and you do that. And I think 2 weeks after we had stand down, we were out in the ocean again doing workups for the next deployment because you're supposed to have like a year and a half to 3 years between deployments, but we got short cycled. So
Hmm. That's a tale as old as time. The yeah the so I guess you guys go out like, all right, do you just kind of like tool around in the Pacific to make sure things are working? Like, you don't spend the entire time just like, all right, tie it to the dock, and then when we need to go somewhere, we'll go there. Uh, I imagine sometimes you have to do, in the army, field training exercises. You go out for 2 weeks or so, make sure that when you turn the thing left, it goes left, and you turn the thing right, it goes right, and all those things. Is that kind of also what you're doing in between?
yeah, but instead of doing it in a motor pool, you're actually in the like living in your JLTV for 2 weeks to 3 months at a time.
So what are the? I guess what did you bring? You're getting ready for a deployment. Other than your A bag, your B bag, and your C bag, what are you bringing on? Like, you bringing pokey bait? You're bringing a Game Boy? What do you guys got?
Some guys bring video games. I brought a lot of books to read, but I was working a lot, so I would just read a chapter and then go to bed, and then wake up 4 hours later to go back on watch. We had one guy. He went to North Carolina across the border from Norfolk. Bought $1,000 worth of dip and had a sea bag full of dip. So
I was gonna ask that too. I guess you can't smoke it down
Hey,
there, huh?
you actually used to until 2010, and then
Really? They
people
they let it up to 2010.
were like, "Hey, why is it always fucking hazy on the boat? And why is everyone getting cancer?"
Yeah, I imagine you guys have air scrubbers of some kind, but like, if at least like 20% of your guys are smoking a pack a day down there, and certainly with boredom or the work that you have to do, I would be smoking more. I'm no longer a smoker, but I did enjoy the habit for about 12 years. But yeah, I was wondering, but yeah, instead you have dip, so you just find like dip bottles everywhere instead of a big cloud haze of cigarette smoke.
If you left your dip bottle laying around, that was usually death by firing squad. So you throw it in the toilet, and so you throw everything in the toilet so it clogs. So you have to send Petty Officer Arnold to unclog the shitter. And that was my life for 5 years.
That's your mechanic job there, is to unclog the toilet. I tell you what, man, have a kid. You're going to keep
Yes.
doing it. So you do the mechanical work kind of on there, and then there's the plumbing work. What other kind of jobs do we have on the ship?
you have so you basically have the God bless the 42 alphas, but they call them yeomen. So you have guys that do paperwork. You have guys that maintain the torpedo tubes, that make sure all the weapons are good. You have the sonar people. You have fire control people, which are just useless. you have the navigation guys, you have the comms guys, you have the electricians and nuclear mechanics that do nuclear mechanic things, and then you have the nuclear electronics technician guys making sure that they can shim the rods.
And then what are your officers like? You have a captain, you have an XO, but what other kind of officery positions do they have under you?
So you have Captain XO, the supply officer, which his name Chop, and then you have three department heads. So a weapons officer that's in charge of weapons department, a navigation officer, a engineering officer, and then you have all the junior officers, which they just have made up titles and they're just there to get in the way.
Just like most officers. Did you ever get to look out the
I
periscope?
did. I drove the
Yeah.
boat for two deployments, so I was always in the middle of it.
Wow. So they do still. You just have I have a little periscope that pops up out of the water and looks around at
Yep,
stuff, huh?
sure do.
Well, like, how else are you guys keeping an eye on stuff like sonar, radar? Well, I actually don't really use radar anymore, right? That's kind of an old
We still
technology.
have radar, but we use it more for navigating when we're on the surface. Yeah, it's usually sonar. You're usually listening for stuff. Um, we can pick up sig.
What do you hear? Like, I know you hear the if you're listening for specific things based on whatever your mission is, but I imagine you hear whales down there. Do you hear the sounds of ocean life, or is it kind of quiet out there?
Sometimes you have dolphins that want to play with the submarine. You hear a lot of shrimp, especially when you blow the poop overboard because they
What does a shrimp sound
just
like?
clicking, just
Ugh,
just
ugh.
hordes and hordes of clicking sounds,
And they
and
like the
they
poop, huh?
eat the poop, and then fishermen catch the shrimp, and then people eat it. So the
Mm.
cycle of life.
Your tax dollars at work,
Yes.
people. Yeah. So you get dolphins, you get the shrimp, and also is this like I know the way that the ocean works. You've got your kind of continental shelf, and then you're out into the deep ocean. Is there a difference? Is like okay? We're out where there's a mile underneath us or so. It's kind of dead quiet out here, or is there still a lot of life out there?
It depends on where you're at. So, and I didn't know this until I was on the submarine. I thought water was just water. It turns out water is not just water, and you can have different. You can have pockets of warm water just in the middle of the ocean, or you can just have pockets of salt that just float there. So
And does that like mess with navigation, or do you notice these
you
things when you go
you
through it?
do.
Like, oh,
So
everything warmed up a little bit.
it's considered background noise, and it also affects how the boat drives. So, for example, so you have the ballast tanks in the submarine that are filled with water, right? And so you just have water, and that's basically how you control the submarine is with weight. You basically make the boat heavier or lighter depending how much water you ingest or uh, get out of it. And so if you're just driving and you hit a pocket of salt, that pocket of salt actually makes the water around you heavier and it makes your boat heavier. And so you just start randomly sinking, or it gets cold and then your boat just gets magically lighter and you're floating to the top. So these are all things that you have to take into consideration when you're driving.
Yeah, do you have these like mapped, or do they just kind of move around and are little navigational minefields as you have to deal with?
No, you just take it on the chin.
You're just hoping, it's like, oh, we must be in some salt. We're kind of sinking
Yep,
here. We
you're
better
just
go
floating
up a little
there,
bit.
and then you'll just be like, "Huh, hey, we're going down." That's not supposed to be happening.
So here's like something I've always wondered about, because I understand that the ballast tanks put blow air out, put water in so that the boat goes down. How do you make it come back up though? Because where do you get the air to make it go back up?
We have pumps that take water out of the tanks, and if that doesn't work, we have reserve air flasks. They're called air flasks, but they're basically these huge pressurized air tanks. And so, in case of an emergency, you can dump air into the tanks so we can come back up.
But from where? Where are you getting the air
Uh,
from?
you're breathing air.
Oh, okay. So you just kind of suck it out of the rest of the boat and jam it
Yes.
in there, huh? So is this like you get a one down and a one up, and then you have to like, well, we've used up our reserve air. We got to surface and get some
Yeah, pretty
more.
much.
Is that all you have to do? Like you surface, you put a hose up and suck down some air, and like, all right, we're
Yeah,
good. We can
you
go back.
usually have some hatches open, and then we can take air from the outside world, or you put up a snorkel mast and take it from the outside world, and then you take the air from the outside world and you put it in the people tank, and then you take my breathing air that I paid for and put it in the oxygen or the air flasks, so I can live in a vacuum.
And then yeah, the circle of life. How is that? Like, are you just like constantly under pressure down there? I mean, I know like mentally, sure, but physically
Yeah,
also.
so you actually swing from living in a vacuum to living in a pressure a lot, actually. I remember at one point in time, we were in such a vacuum that the computers were starting to overheat because there wasn't enough air to go over the fans to cool them.
But so how does that feel for you though, as the person? Are you lightheaded? Like, are you guys low on oxygen,
You're
or
low on
what's going on?
oxygen, so you're always tired, and my joints would hurt. Like my whole body would just, I would know when we were in a vacuum because all of my joints would just hurt.
I hope that you all are getting some kind of disability once you get out, because that sounds horrendous what you're doing to
Yes,
yourself.
yes, it is.
So anything like what else? What else is going on down there? Like tell me some fun stuff about being on a submarine.
It's kind of hard to say because everyone's either doing training, they're playing video games, they're doing work. I worked a lot. I was in charge of all the damage control equipment, so I was working 16 to 20 hours a day doing that. A lot of guys just they got off watch and they went right to bed and just they coast to coast it for the entire deployment.
Well, I'm glad that you guys got paid extra money for that, because that like I me as soon as they made me work more than 12 hours, I was immediately complaining. So
Yeah.
and even getting up to 12 hours was pretty, like, it's like, guys, we're done with everything. We're done with everything. We're army reservists. We don't need to be here. Oh, we're gonna stay here, huh? We're gonna stay the entire time. Cool, fun, great, thanks. My morale is skyrocketing right now. But it seems like you guys is just like, look, this is the life. This is what it is. We all agreed to be here for some insane reason. It sucks, and we all know it. But we're gonna be okay with it. And I mean, it's not like you're spending money while you're on deployment. So you probably come home to a really nice bank
Yes.
account.
I actually, before I went into the army, I had a 8 month staycation and didn't work. And it was probably the best 8 months of my life.
So yeah, why'd you move over to the army?
So originally I got out. For some reason I got bored after 2 weeks and decided to go back in. So I originally wanted to go to the Coast Guard, and they said that's awesome. You can come into the Coast Guard and be a puddle pirate with us, but you're going to have to be an E3. I'm like, I'm not doing that again. E5. So I went to the army and I was like, hey, I want to be a soldier. And can I keep my E5? And they're like, absolutely, man. You have no idea what you're doing, but you get to keep your E5.
So I meant, did you have to go back through basic training with the army, or did they just like, nah,
I
you
had to
probably
go
get it?
through basic training at Fort Leonard Wood.
Ew. How old were you when you had to go through
This
basic?
happened last year, so 26.
Oh, well, it's young enough. We had a 36-year-old in my basic
We had a
training.
49-year-old National Guardsman.
Oh God,
So,
how did he
what?
do? How did he do?
Pretty well. He actually he kicked ass.
Oh, good for him. Do you get the drill sergeants like give you shit, or do you like keep it quiet? Like, no, I've never been in the military. Don't know what you guys are talking about. Never been on a submarine.
They usually generally left us alone. We had our own barracks. We had our cell phones. I had slim chickens on base every day. So basic, I don't know.
Oh, you're in a special basic
Yeah,
training, huh?
while the kids are getting smoked, I was out getting chicken strips. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why they're
Oh, okay.
complaining. Basic wasn't that bad.
Yeah, the prior service guys. That's where'd you do
Fort Leonard
basic
Wood.
at? Huh. That's where I've never heard of like a but I mean it makes sense for there to be a prior service, because when I went through my AIT for the army, there was all of us who were fresh from basic training, all of us, scared 18-year-olds that we were, and then there was another barracks that had older people who were changing their MOSs or whatever and moving over, and they got to like, oh, we only have to do PT like 3 times a week, and we don't have to do any kind of other bullshit. We show up to class and then we can have a beer afterwards. All of us are just getting screamed at
Yep,
constantly.
that's how it went.
So are you full time
Full
or are you a
time.
reservist? Oh, okay. And then I don't know where are you at now? Are you out on the East
I
Coast?
am at the new Fort Cavazos, previously known as Fort Hood.
Oh, how's that going?
It goes. I definitely tried everything I could to go to Fort Drum because, and nope, I'm here.
Fort Drum. Wow, that's like why?
I was in Connecticut for a little while, and I absolutely love
Okay.
the Northeast. I'm originally from Georgia, and I just have this hatred of the South. So
Yeah.
I just want to
Yeah.
go. I want to go back to the Northeast, but no, I'm here.
I I can understand that. Yeah. I personally, if I was, I would not want to go down, especially Texas. I had to spend a couple weeks down in Fort Bliss, and it was just god awful. But it's not Fort Irwin, and it's not Fort Lewis. So the two training bases that absolutely suck out loud. So I guess you got that going for you. You're near like a couple of decent cities down there, so you can be relatively normal down on Fort Hood, I imagine.
I guess.
For whatever normal means in the
uh,
military.
you know just as much as I do.
Yeah, Matthew, I want to thank you for taking time out of your 4 day to come on and talk to me. I'm really glad I got a chance to talk to somebody on the Submariners side. I'm glad to hear that it basically boils down to you guys are just a slightly more fucked up than the rest of us, and we appreciate it. We need somebody. We need those people who are
Oh
more
yeah,
fucked up
God
than
bless
the
them.
rest. Right. We need people who do the fucking weird jobs, like be a submariner or be special forces or I don't know, drive gigantic gas trucks across Iraq and get blown up on a regular basis. Certainly was never going to be me, but somebody out there has to
Well,
do it.
yeah, you know how it goes. There's a niche for everybody.
That's right. The army's got a job for everybody. You just have to be dumb enough to
Absolutely.
join. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody else, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.